Good evening. I'm Tom Yorty, pastor of Westminster Presbyterian Church. We are delighted that you have joined us for this very special evening to both learn about and hear one of Buffalo's cultural treasures, our Aeolian Skinner pipe organ. In just a few minutes, our organist and choirmaster, Garrett will tell you more about what makes this a landmark instrument and why this room, one of the finest acoustical spaces in the city, provides the perfect setting for our ongoing effort to present the finest sacred music in Western New York. Westminster got its start in 1854 when 40 members of this church decided to build a 1,000-seat sanctuary. It was visionary and brave, yet following the Civil War and for several decades after, the country was recovering from that epic conflict and from fiscal crises that plagued the rebuilding of the nation. In 1894, Buffalo and Westminster began an upward trajectory. I am the fifth pastor since Dr. Holmes arrived in the mid-1890s, 125 years ago. Garrett Martin is the fourth choirmaster in 80 years. Those long tenures tell you a lot about the stability and commitment of this church to the city and Western New York. We take our life together and our life in this community very seriously. From building and staffing the second settlement house in America in the 1890s to founding and sponsoring the Westminster Economic Development Initiative in 2005, we are a congregation that carries out the biblical calling to serve our neighbor. By doing so, we seek to build a stronger city and region. Westminster is involved in the cultural fabric of Western New York. Our choir regularly sings for annual hospice remembrance events, for holiday celebrations at the Saturn and Buffalo clubs. We present an annual requiem for the homeless. We partner with other choirs for concerts, worship services, and special events. The Western New York Chamber Orchestra and the Buffalo Brass Ensemble are in residence here and perform regularly. On a normal Halloween, Garrett improvises organ music to accompany a classic silent film, and the Buffalo Philharmonic Orchestra has taken notice of our refurbishment project, the one we'll hear about tonight, and has expressed an interest in future collaborations. In fact, Garrett will soon record organ works to be featured on an upcoming BPO Pops concert following the collaborative steps of his predecessors, Richard Herr, Thomas Swan, and Hans Wiegland. Partnered with our commitment to service in the community is our resolve to preserve the beauty of this campus. We are now in the midst of a capital improvement campaign, from rebuilding our steeple and spire to restoring some of our stained glass windows and our Delaware Avenue doors to needed repairs and improvements for our Aeolian Skinner pipe organs. And we have mission outreach as a part of this campaign on the east side of Buffalo with new partners in mission. Thank you for joining us tonight to learn about the finest sacred music program in Western New York. We are grateful for your time and interest.
Jerusalem. Worship and music are inseparable terms here at Westminster. This traces to our founding and the first years of this new church on Delaware Avenue. Though Westminster was founded in 1854, the new church building was not ready until September of 1859. Even at the beginning of this new sanctuary, music was part of the design. Provisions were made for a choir and organ in the chancel. In 1861, the church secured its first pipe organ from the Garrett House Company of Buffalo. In 1875, just 14 years later, the first organ was replaced by an instrument from the Roosevelt Company of New York City for $5,000. And in 1880, just 5 years later, the Hook and Hastings organ seen here was purchased and installed in the present location. Mr. William Waith, the organist and choirmaster, had considerable explaining to do. He maintained that the original location on the pulpit platform was defective from the standpoint of sound projection, and that the rear of the church location would greatly improve audition. I agree with Mr. Waith. In 1920, it became advisable to buy a new instrument, and the Austin Organ Company of Hartford, Connecticut installed a new organ for $36,224, retaining the casework of the 1880 Hook and Hastings, now with a more subdued facade after the Tiffany redecoration of the church in 1902. All of the instruments prior to the Austin would likely have been very small organs with mechanical action and limited tonal colors. The Austin organ brought Westminster into the 20th century with a modern electro-pneumatic action and a specification that was common of instruments during this period, focusing on playing transcriptions and orchestral type accompaniments, which no doubt was influenced by the Wurlitzer organs that were installed in movie houses across this country. In 1954, at Westminster Centennial, considerable work was needed on the Austin organ, some 33 years after its installation. It was decided that the church would instead invest in a brand new instrument. Just 4 years earlier, in 1951, a two-manual 25-rank organ was installed in the chapel by the Aeolian Skinner Company of Boston, Massachusetts, surely in an effort to gain the contract for the larger instrument needed in the sanctuary. And so, in 1955, Westminster signed a contract for a 4-manual organ of 81 ranks, incorporating an echo division in the chancel from the previous Austin organ. This is the instrument we still hear today. At that time, it cost $81,891, plus another $23,373 in gallery renovation and installation costs. The older organs were placed in the center of the gallery. The new organ was placed in matching cases on either side with a positive division and crowning trumpet en chamade cantilevered in the center, thus making room for a larger choir than the previous quartet of professionals that supplied music up to that point. The new sound of the Aeolian Skinner organ would have been groundbreaking when installed in 1958. No more of the dull sound from previous instruments, but a brilliant, fiery sound with full-bodied, well-balanced principal choruses and complete reed choruses found in multiple divisions. Much like the changing tastes from the 19th into the 20th century, the beginning of the 1950s brought about the organ reform movement in this country. Organs, like our Austin, were seen as less favorable to those instruments that could play music from all countries and periods with authenticity, resulting in what we now know as the American classic organ, of which our instrument is a perfect example. I still say this today: if our organ needs to have a French or German or Italian or English or even an American accent, it truly can. I believe a church organ is called upon to do several things. First and foremost, lead the song of the congregation. Second, accompany choirs and soloists. Third, play solo repertoire. And finally, play with orchestras, ensembles, brass, and other instruments. We can see the history of our organs in 30-year periods, from the early formation of the church to the relocation of the organ and choir to the rear gallery, to the Austin organ of 1920, to the Aeolian Skinner organ of 1958. Thus, in 1990, 32 years after the organ's installation, the church interior was renovated, and so was our 1958 organ. Leathers were replaced, 3 new reed stops were added to the Great Division, and the entire instrument was removed and cleaned to make way for the expanded rear gallery. And now, in 2020, the console has reached the end of its usable life, along with the switching systems and electrical wiring. Many organs from the 1950s are on their second or even third console. The fact that we have been able to maintain our instrument so well for so long is a testament to the perspicacious investment made over 65 years ago in the leading organ builder of the United States. In addition, we want a matching console in the front of the sanctuary that will allow for solo recitals, choral accompanying, and major works for organ and orchestra to take place without the lag and distance from the rear gallery. I am so thankful that in 1990, when the Aeolian Skinner organ was 32 years old, Thomas Swan saw the value in keeping this organ instead of replacing it, as we saw in our church's history. But now we are at yet another 30-year crossroad where work needs to be completed so this instrument leads worship for the people of God at Westminster for the next century or more. Imagine being able to celebrate the organ centennial at the same time we celebrate the church's bicentennial. The history of the Holmes Chapel organ is much more succinct and straightforward. We have no record of an instrument in the chapel until 1926, when an Aeolian organ, originally built in 1901, was donated to Westminster from the home of Frank Hamlin of North Street. It would not have been out of the ordinary for large homes and wealthy families to have a pipe organ of some substance, often driven by a player mechanism similar to that of a player piano. This instrument served in the Holmes Chapel from 1926 until 1951, when a contract was signed for Aeolian Skinner to build a 25-rank, 2-manual organ with a floating positive division on the east wall, incorporating much existing pipework from the Aeolian organ and used pipework from the Aeolian Skinner warehouse. The George C. and Ida K. Rice Memorial Organ was dedicated on the 6th of June, 1951, just 5 days after the organ was finished, for the cost of $24,500. I've often said that this is the workhorse organ at Westminster, being played every Sunday throughout the entire year and used for individual practice, choir rehearsals, and small concerts. This charming small instrument is in need of complete restoration, including the re-leathering of wind chests and reservoirs, reversing water damage to the pipework and chambers, replacing 1950s cloth-wrapped wiring and antiquated switching, and a new 3-manual console to ensure this organ leads the people of Westminster for another 60 years. Worship and music at Westminster can be pretty grand. Our pipe organ roaring, handbells ringing, robed choirs processing, brass musicians playing fanfares. We all know how Westminster Presbyterian Church looks, but I've often wondered how Westminster sounds. Westminster sounds like the hearty congregational singing of a favorite hymn. Westminster sounds like our remarkable choir singing one of our best anthems. Westminster sounds like our Aeolian Skinner pipe organ ablaze during a procession or during the doxology. This organ, I believe, is truly the sound of Westminster. It is our voice when we are not even able to speak or sing. It carries our song in spite of our human inadequacies. The organ has led us in times of greatest joy, weddings, Easters, rally days, Christmases, but also in times of greatest sorrows, funerals, memorial services, Good Fridays, 9/11, beginnings of war, even during a pandemic. As mentioned, a pipe organ has been the centerpiece of our music programs since the beginning, always focusing us and our worship in just the right way. The organ literally moves air, stirring faith and awe inside of us. One member of the choir and donor to this campaign remarked, "May the organ continue to inspire and stir the spirit in ways that spoken word cannot." I think that this organ is one of the things that helped put Westminster on the map, and no doubt the instrument's intimate partnership with each choirmaster, all who left their mark on Westminster and the city of Buffalo. James Shearer, William Benbow, Robert Huffstadter, Wallace Van Leer, Hans Vigeland, Thomas Swan, Richard Herr, and I, since 2013, am surrounded by the great cloud of witnesses of these saints that led the congregational and choral song here at Westminster, and I am standing on the shoulders of these musical giants. Of course, each of these musicians were paired with clergy who together furthered God's vision of Westminster to the city, region, and to the world. Westminster has always been a place of open doors. The vast and varied music ministries here has been no exception, welcoming Western New York to uplifting musical offerings through concerts, lectures, and worship of the highest caliber. May God give us faith to sing always, Alleluia. And when our voices tire, may these cherished instruments sing for us.
going to First Presbyterian Church in Lewiston, I loved the hymns and organ music. My mother, who was a pianist and organist, sent me for voice lessons. However, our schools at that time did not have music programs. My high school did have a choir, and I joined that, and after college, I joined my church choir. After my Marine Corps service, rejoined my choir, but then work and family precluded me from continuing to sing. Years later, a fateful trip to Middlebury College reunion a few years ago with my daughter Joan, who incidentally is a deacon at Westminster, I continued my musical journey. Joan and I are on the same 5-year schedule for reunions. While we were there, Joan said, "Dad, will you go with me to the alumni church service on Sunday?" During our reunion weekends, a classmate of mine gives a breakfast on Sunday morning before we all go home. And knowing that I may not see some of my classmates in 5 years, I had to make a hard choice. The proverbial Hobson's choice, church or the traditional breakfast with my classmates. When I was an undergraduate at Middlebury, I had the good fortune to attend Robert Frost's lectures and recitations. Thinking about the choice I was about to make, I was reminded of Robert Frost's The Road Not Taken. 2 roads diverged in a yellow wood, and sorry I could not travel both, and be one traveler long I stood, and looked down the road as far as I could, to where it bent in the undergrowth, and then I took the other just as fair. Long I stood, then took the other road, choosing the Sunday morning alumni church service. One of Joan's classmates was in the alumni choir. I saw him tapping his feet, counting the rhythms, and my longing for music began to stir. That fall, I had the great fortune of meeting Reed Taylor. We began to talk about the choir. Reed suggested I call Garrett to express my desire to join the choir. I was basically terrified at my rusty, limited reading skills, but I gathered myself together and called Garrett. After somewhat lamely telling my story, Garrett said the 6 words that literally changed my life. And greatly relieved, I rejoined the choir. The rest is history. A wonderful continuing experience of music, fellowship, and education, which has exceeded my greatest thoughts and expectations. What were those 6 words that Garrett spoke to me? Showing up is half of it, and that is our challenge today, to show up, supporting the Preserve the Pinnacle campaign dedicated to the restoration of our 2 beloved pipe organs. In recognition of those 6 words that changed my life, Mary and I will match dollar for dollar up to $25,000 by June 30th, 2021. Thanks do not belong to me, but thanks belong to my mom, Viola Proudfoot Rice, who gave me the gift of music, and thanks for the opportunity given to me by Garrett, and thanks to the kindness and fellowship shown me by my choir mates. And as the road not taken ends, 2 roads diverged in a yellow wood, and I took the road less traveled by, and that has made all the difference.
My name is Roger Seifert, and I am a co-chair of the Preserve the Pinnacle Capital Campaign here at Westminster Church, along with Bob Bojdak and Tim Johnston. With a campaign goal of $4.1 million and currently $3.5 million raised, repairs to our 104-year-old roof and steeple are well underway. The pandemic forced us to postpone plans for a music-centric fundraiser to focus on the restoration and enhancement of our two historic Aeolian Skinner pipe organs. But that is why we are here today, to talk about our music ministries virtually and show you how you can help ensure that our pipe organs, the centerpieces of our music programs, can lead us in worship for another 50 years or more. In the sanctuary, essential work will include new modern consoles, new wiring, and switching to replace failing mechanisms dating from the 1950s, and a number of technical enhancements as well as new casework to enhance the beauty of the choir gallery. Cleaning and regulation of pipework and re-leathering of the wind chests will also be undertaken as needed. The Holmes Chapel organ has sustained substantial water damage and as a result requires a full restoration. Cleaning and repair of all 1,464 pipes, re-leathering of the wind chests, tonal regulation, a new console, switching, and wiring, as well as a new pipe facade. Westminster maintains the finest sacred music program in Western New York and plays a leading role in hosting numerous performances throughout the year on our historic campus here in the heart of the city of Buffalo. We are pleased asking for your gift so that we can proceed with organ restorations in a timely manner and fully close the gap promptly on the $600,000 we have yet to raise. We please need your pledge to ensure these instruments do not fall silent. I'll be pleased to answer any questions or provide more details, as will Bob and Tim, or any member of the Preserve the Pinnacle Capital Campaign Cabinet. Thank you.